across the street, and I am familiar with that corner there. So that's probably what we'll wait for.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the distancing between schools and alcohol? Isn't there like a 600-foot distance requirement? What was that, Jerry? Remember we did that?
There's a 600-foot, I think it becomes discretionary within that. It can be, I think it can be waived. But I believe that ABC asks if there are schools or other
churches.
sensitive uses within 600 feet.
And,
So
I-
it's-
I just know there are.
Yeah, it's a question. I don't think it's an automatic
Okay.
denial.
No, I can answer that. It's what the state refers to as a consideration point.
Mhm.
So schools, parks, churches, these types of things, and yeah, 600 feet is the threshold. The real problem is when you have residential within 100 feet. That sometimes it's discretionary, but sometimes that isn't automatic, no. But 600 feet is a consideration point, so what the state will look at is, are there adequate separation factors? And if you go around this site, there's a pretty good buffer with the other commercial uses. There's the mega church behind, the Korean church behind the site, but there's a huge parking lot between the church and the store. So yeah, I understood your comment about the LAPD, and you're right. As a practical matter, if you don't get, the best you can get out of LAPD is a statement of no opposition. They don't support any type of CUP, no matter what the use is. But they will indicate to the zoning administrator that they have no opposition. That's what I would expect them to indicate in this case, because this location has good record on very low police calls for service, and because of the buffer uses. So, can't speak for them, but if I thought it was likely, if this is, based on the stats and what we have, and the concentration for ABC licenses, that it's a site that they would not support, I wouldn't have started this process now.
Jerry, just a point of order. We have a stakeholder here who looks like he's going to record this. I'd just like him to introduce himself so that the presenters will know they're being recorded,
Okay.
as well as the members of the committee.
I'm William Kuzman. I'm a stakeholder, homeowner, resident of Granada Hills since 1987. Just recently become involved with the neighborhood council. The camera is here because it's allowed to be here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kuzma. Dr. Bob.
Well, first, Bruce, I want to thank you for coming to us and sharing with us what you guys are hoping to do. It's always nice to hear about it before it happens. Kind of like we were talking about the bike lane, that was one of those where they put the cart before the horse and then we're trying to catch up. So thank you for being here tonight. It looks like you've done this before. It looks like you've done your homework. You've kind of already tried to cover most of the things that would automatically send up a red flag and have us say, no way, we don't want this. But as a small businessman, I'm always surprised by all the restrictions that are placed on small businesses. And I just hearing what you're saying with the other ones that are there. We don't want every corner to have a liquor store, but I think it's important that we not cherry pick and say, I like that store. Let's let them have. I know you guys are going to be talking about that too. That if you've got some people who are allowed to do it, to suddenly say, but not you. I don't know. My thought always is that if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, and not unless there's a problem or there's a track record of you guys having a problem. I would be hard pressed to say no way. Okay, so for all of those guys who are in small business, I think we need to be fair to everybody and not cherry pick. You got one that you say I like, they're here already, and forget about the rest of them. So just know that as we're talking about this, unless the LAPD has some real concern with that area too close to school or church or something, that I certainly wouldn't think it unreasonable to have you guys have the same opportunities at business that the other guys have, as your competition has on the other corner.
I appreciate that. And, to be candid, you're never going to be able to demonstrate a public necessity for another beer and wine license, because there's a lot out there. But if you look at it from a planning standpoint, there are a lot of non-conforming liquor stores all over the place. And when you approve a new business like this, first of all, they're not after the same market, of course, they just want to capture that existing customer that's gassy, not the same reason why they sell milk, and the same reason why they sell sandwiches. If you don't have the beer and wine, it's just not a very convenient store. So they want to have a little bit of everything, but we recognize you got to put controls on it. And although yes, maybe another one gets approved, you're approving something with a lot of restrictions that the city has a lot of control over, that now gets to compete with the non-conforming uses, which have no control. If you don't approve the new businesses, then they're just insulated from further competition. So we do want to compete, and we do want to level the playing field, but to do it the right way.
I've got a concern, you know, that use is actually, it's a high concentration of liquor on that corner, okay? You've got the Sunrise, you've got Ralph's, you've got, I think you've got the, what about the, Arco across the
Yeah.
street? And my concern is, you know, driving. To me, when people come up to a gas up, quick go, get the liquor, to me, it's even more of an invitation for drinking and driving. Also, we got the kids in the school that kind of meander that way. Also, that's a very high crime rate corner. Police are constantly having issues with transients being there. So, I mean, yeah, I understand the whole business picture and picking and choosing and all that kind of thing. But there's a point where overconcentration is enough, and that's my concern, you know, from this committee. I just wanted to share that with you, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we get that.
That's my concern, just
Um,
because of that whole corner, that whole factor, the situation of the thing.
Well, it's very commercially oriented. You have a lot of
Yeah,
retail
but it's
businesses.
a school and it's sensitive uses,
Um,
there's 2 churches there.
I can tell you, I had a case in Sacramento once, and I thought a Sacramento PD guy really put it in perspective when looking at the sensitivities for gas and alcohol concurrent sales. He said, you know, everybody drives to the store to buy alcohol. We're not a bike or a pedestrian culture, so whether somebody's going to Costco or Trader Joe's or Ralph's or
There's
Chevron,
food there too.
they're driving. The data just doesn't bear that out for drunk driving in convenience store or gas. Drunk driving incidents come from bars and people at parties. But if you're talking about the nuisance issues and you look at what this location would sell, they wouldn't sell anything less than a 6-pack of beer. So these are not the impulse buy 40 container malt liquor. They're not going to sell any of that stuff. They would sell a lot less alcohol and a lot less problem type alcohol than the Ralphs across the street would. So if we get the concern, we're doing our best to address it.
Bruce, just a question, I don't know if you'll know this, but if you go to Arco, can you buy a 40-ouncer? A
You
single?
know, I went in
And
there
I
a few
don't
months
know.
ago, and I can't remember, honestly. I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so they'd have kind of that same restriction already, that they wouldn't be selling single cans?
They do not. The Arco station, I believe they got their conditional use, or I assume they got it before the city was imposing those restrictions, so they do sell singles,
Oh,
and they sell
okay, well,
the mega beers, yeah.
okay. Well, I'm glad you guys aren't planning to do that.
No, it's just not gonna happen.
And you have all the video,
Yeah,
state of the art?
Yeah, state-of-the-art digital surveillance typically records for a minimum of 30 days. If LAPD wants it, you burn it on a CD, you give it to them.
And no loitering posted?
Oh, yes, yeah, I mean, the photos were taken a few days ago. I've been at that site maybe 4 or 5 times, mid-afternoon, early evening. You know, it definitely helps if it's a small company. They're very on top of their stores. I have not seen a problem at that site.
And does anybody know if Denny's sells beer and wine?
Denny's? No.
Don't think
No,
so.
No.
no liquor license at Denny's?
No.
I've only had breakfast there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only have one other question, and that is, the church just tore down that building right next to
The
your
gas
building,
station.
the gas station there. And do you know what they're planning on putting in place of that, or nothing at all?
I
They're
don't.
building a new building there.
They're putting up a new building there?
Is that where the
It-
pool hall used to be in the?
No, this was actually closer to Balboa, it's right next to the gas station.
There was a dental office in
There was a dental
Yeah,
office
it was
there.
two
I
stories.
guess Swenson's or something like that.
Yeah.
Big and
It
tall
would be
store.
behind this
Yeah.
fencing right here.
But the plans they submitted have them building a new, I think it's a 3-story, And,
Yeah, there it is.
I think it's gonna be classrooms or
It's related
offices.
to the school?
It's related to the
Church,
church.
yeah, it's
church
related,
and
the
their
church owns all the
operations.
property there. And, so that would be the only other concern I would have, other than whatever the LAPD, how they came down. But, if that's gonna be classrooms for kids of a certain age, that would probably be my only other concern. Because it's right up against, this gas station.
I should mention that I did go to the church office, because they had opposition to, beer and wine sales in the area
Yeah, I remember
before.
across the way.
I went in and I specifically talked to them, invited them to come down and provide their comments, and they didn't contact me, they're not here, but even the person at the office indicated that they didn't have any particular response to it.
Okay.
I guess the request would be if we could, what we'd ask for is some sort of motion that the land use committee would have no opposition to this request, provided LAPD does.
Well, it's not just us, we report to the council as a whole, and the council votes on whatever we present that we pass on to the council, so it's, we're just the vetting group.
Understand.
John?
Just a few questions. What's your total square footage, floor space?
The C-store or the entire site?
The one that your alcoholic beverage is allocated against, sales floor space?
Oh, well, the C-store is about, I believe it's about 1,800 square feet. So this would, the 10% would be a typical CUP or ABC license condition. Usually we try to address it, since they're probably not gonna put any beer on the floor anyway, it would just be in the cooler doors. They do that typically because if you're only gonna sell till 10 PM or midnight or whatever it is, but the store is open, then you can lock the cooler door,
You're
so you
asking
don't
for,
get the beer run.
you're asking for 180 square feet is what you're asking for.
I'd have to check the exact stats on that to give you the precise square feet, but not more than 10%. So if it's, and the reason for that is if it's Super Bowl weekend or something and they have a sale on whatever it might be, they might want to put something on the floor to give them some flexibility.
180 square feet's a bit space. Let me, have you done any outreach to these two schools or to the church?
Would not.
And it seems like it would be good to have that input before we took a position on that, since those are the ones that are affected by this.
Well, our usual response on these, and we do appreciate and encourage the applicants to come initially to get an initial read, but since things often change from planning until when a filing is actually done, we generally reserve a final vote of support until we actually have the filing with the city. But yes, I would suggest that what we do is we give an indication of whether, under what we understand from here, if we're good with it, or if there's other items we would like to see on here, so that Bruce's company has an idea of how they should proceed with it.
Now with your, it's been a while since I've seen one, but in your process, I thought that you'd had to provide a density map of the alcohol being served in a certain area. I thought that was looked at. You know what I'm talking about?
Concentration, John?
Concentration.
You mean through the CUP process?
I think that's the ABC process.
It's an ABC process.
There's a couple different things that happen there. Without getting too technical, you have a state law that looks at the ratio of ABC licenses for the county within a census tract. And if you're over the baseline ratio, or or more than the average crime calls for service, basically. They have different ways of reporting the crime. Then you not only need the CUP, this is true statewide, but you need the additional finding from the local jurisdiction of public convenience or necessity. And in this case, that comes from the city council. So they do look at the concentration figures for the census tract for off-sale licenses. And in this case, I believe there are 4 existing licenses, and the baseline would be 4 licenses. So we do need that public convenience or necessity determination as well. But that comes from the city council, separate from the CUP process.
Because you're going to be over-concentrating the area, is that what you're saying?
Not that you're over-concentrating it, but that you trigger the public convenience or necessity statute because you're over the ratio of the average number of licenses. It doesn't mean, that the problem is the way they wrote the state law, you have this notion of concentration. You're gonna put the ABC licenses in the commercial zones where people don't live, but the ratio is based on the population figures. So you always end up with a condition of undue concentration in these commercial zones because you put the alcohol where the people don't live. If you look at State Street in Santa Barbara, I think the authorized number is 10 licenses, and yet there's 100 licenses there. And you have the same thing on a commercial street like this. So we're not much over the ratio, but I think we're dead even, so one more and we trigger the finding.
I guess for me, what would be good to see is what that actual, since you're gonna, I assume, prepare that anyways, what that concentration is, what the calls for service are. I've heard Dr. Bob talk on it, and I understand competition, but I don't believe that liquor licenses work the same way. Just because somebody has one doesn't necessarily mean another person can get one. They're highly regulated. And in fact, I think because of that, there's a value assessed to them, is that correct?
There is a value assessed to certain types of ABC licenses, a restaurant license like you might be after, but not an off-sale beer and wine license. Those have no inherent value. So if you need a what's called the Type 47 restaurant license, the only way to get that is to buy it. If a beer and wine license, you just apply for it through the ABC.
And how long is your license good for, and is this conditional use permit?
The City of Los Angeles typically issues a CUP for anywhere from 3 to 5 years before you have to renew it. Yes, sir.
You know,
I'm sorry, but you're absolutely right. Just because somebody else has it doesn't mean the other guy gets it. It's looked at by the city and then again by the state. Is this license going to cause a law enforcement problem? Is this license going to cause a nuisance? So you don't get any benefit at all because from the regulators because the guy across the street has one. Not a good argument.
I'm sensitive to the time here, so
Yes, sir.
let me hold off on the committee for a second. Are there any questions from the public or comments on this item? Okay, I'll take 2 more here and then Eric.
Honestly, I think you came to us a little earlier because we haven't had a chance to vet this to the community and the surrounding areas, the schools, the LAPD, or anybody like that. And we couldn't make any decisions to pass this along to the board until we had more time to investigate how the community at large feels about this location and beer and wine sales, especially since we don't have anything from LAPD or that situation. So, and truthfully, probably the best you could get for us is no opposition.
That's okay.
That would probably be the best you could get. We seldom, if ever, say, especially in a service station type environment, I don't think you'd ever get anybody from our committee, at least, to say that, yeah, we want it there. It's never happened so long, and I've been on the board since the beginning. So that's what I would just recommend. You said yourself you haven't filed, you haven't did all of the preliminary stuff, So for us to come up and say, oh yeah, or no, I think it really couldn't serve us in any way, shape, or form. And it couldn't serve you either, because I know for a fact that a lot of people would have a lot of other questions.
Dr. Rob, you mind if I respond to Eric briefly?
Yes, go
Right,
ahead.
thank you.
I don't mind.
You know, I appreciate you coming early, and we'd encourage any applicants to come before filing, so thank you. You know, as I said, and Eric said, we're generally not comfortable, we're not comfortable saying, oh, we approved this project just based on an applicant coming in and saying, okay, here's what I want to do, because we actually have to see the paperwork. However, we are able to give an indication of whether we've got a serious problem with this, maybe it's something that can be mitigated, maybe it's something that can't, or if we're, hey, this, you know, as long as this goes through without any other objections, we're, you know, it seems favorable. Final support would be after we see, and I think it's proper that that's after we see the conditional use permit application, but I would not discourage, in fact, I'd encourage the applicants to come in prior to filing, when, you know, so we can talk about this in more relaxed, we're not on the timetable and so on, and there's a little more time to work out concerns, maybe softer concerns that the community has. Dr. Bob?
You covered it. Well said, Jerry.
Oh, okay,
Excellent.
thank you. So, Eric, I think you had said something about no opposition to the project as
I
presented.
said probably the best he could get would probably be no opposition, because we've never voted yes to a service station situation since I've been here. Can you remember anybody? So I think that's probably the best you could get. But again, I just think that there's too much, we still haven't talked to other people as yet, but we are glad that we know what your plans and your intentions are, and as soon as we see that information, as Jerry said.
Let me throw out a suggestion, because I wrote this down as we were talking to try to capture things, and you know, if whoever wants to make this or amend the wording, please do so. So there's no objection to the project as presented based on the information currently available, conditioned upon statement of no opposition from LAPD. So that's, we'd be looking for that. And also, I would like to throw in the idea of no sales of beer containers over 22 ounces. And I would also like to refer to, there's a conditional use permit that was issued not too long ago where they had particular verbiage for this, and it basically took care of it was the 40 ounce, the mega beer. I realize you're not selling individuals, but however the wording was in this CUP, they had no sales under a 6-pack, and they had no containers over a certain size to deal with I guess maybe a sales of a 6-pack of the huge ones. And I believe it also addressed individual wine coolers in a 26 or 28 ounce type size.
Sure, I know exactly.
So, you know, I probably need to refine the wording on that, which we could add into the final.
I wouldn't want to do anything with this other than the fact that he's giving us his information.
Okay.
We cannot, there's no way, shape, or form we could move this forward to the board in its current condition until we get more information. Right now, he's just giving us information, and I just want to take it at that.
Okay, Dr. Bob?
Bruce, I appreciate again your coming out early and letting us know. Are you at all opposed to coming back
Oh,
again?
no, I'll be back.
So,
I mean, if
yeah,
this
so
plan
if
wants
we-
to go forward, I'll be back.
If we can't make a recommendation for you tonight, you're still okay with
I
that? You're not
wouldn't be
under the
comfortable
gun,
with that.
pressure-wise,
No.
time-wise, we can still talk more about it, and I appreciate you coming out to get the ball rolling,
Okay.
and we'll,
No, absolutely.
We'll go
I-
from there.
you know,
so we don't have to take any
Well, and
recommendation.
let me ask you, Bruce, did
Your
we,
comments are well taken, I get it. So, you know, from my perspective, this is not done, but at least it's a good start.
Yeah.
did you get the indication, or did you get what you were looking to from us or what you were looking for from us as far as an indication of whether the project is you know, could be acceptable in its current
I
state?
heard a lot of things from that, I did not hear the word no, so yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Dave?
Jerry, I just, the sense I'm getting from the other committee members is that we need a little more information. So I'd like to just move that we table this issue pending a decision, yea or nay or no opposition from the LAPD. And also, second condition would be that we contact the Valley Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is the high school almost immediately adjacent, and just touch base with them in terms of what's being proposed there and get a, not a yes or no, but just a general feeling from them as to whether or not they have a big problem with it. And
Okay.
based on those
Yeah,
two
high school.
conditions.
Yeah, no, it's vast.
Well,
Then
the
we-
charter isn't gonna be there till
Do
2015.
we formally,
so-
do we formally need to dispose of it that way, or can we just,
Well, we just
if
table it.
there is no motion on the floor, we'll then take it back up when they have
That's fine.
compiled all the information.
Yes.
So Dave made that motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Okay, so we'll proceed with a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, so we're going to set it aside for, when you have, I mean, you heard all the comments here, so you'll be able to incorporate those in the filing and take them under consideration. But my own comment, I found your list of conditions very good. I do want to do some more research, and my only comment was on the larger.
I'll shoot you an email
Items.
with the conditions you're looking for.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, great.
I know what you're-
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Chris.
thanks, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is another conditional use of beer and wine, this time for on-site at the Presto Pasta Restaurant, 17923 Chatsworth.
This is just, if you want backup information, be able to look at something. I don't expect you to read it or memorize it right now. Okay, well, first of all, thank you all for your service. I've served 6 years on the Burbank Planning Board, and
Wow.
I definitely understand and appreciate the time that you guys put into this, so please know that we are very, very grateful. We feel privileged to be here and to be able to get your input and your thoughts in terms of our application. So this is Presto Pasta, right at Chatsworth and Zelza and Lindley. The store is open now. It opened on March 26th of 2015. It's been very well received by the community. We're very happy about that. It's the fifth location, so they do have a track record, and they're applying for beer and wine application. And it's part of their brand, it's part of their basic services, so it's very important to them that they do have this use. However, it is a relatively small percentage of their sales, so it's just a ancillary, a secondary use to the primary use of a very hearty and delicious meal. We highly recommend you all come and enjoy it. So the store hours that are proposed are 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Currently, they're open from 10:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. and then on Friday and Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. They don't anticipate changing those hours, but it's helpful to them as a business to be able to have some flexibility. I know quite a few land use consultants like to propose separate hours of alcohol sales versus operation. And I actually don't recommend that my applicants do that. One is because in a situation like this where you have a restaurant, I don't want there to be any potential error at all in terms of someone, say it's allowed to start at 10 o'clock and they sell a wine to somebody at 9:45. I also know a lot of people who work multiple shifts and they eat breakfast in the morning, they eat their dinner in the morning hours. So it's just 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., both alcohol sales and operation. Happy, of course, to hear any comment or questions that you may have about that. This, as you know, is a shopping center that has just undergone some significant reinvestment and renovation. This particular pad has itself had some incredible investment to it, has an outdoor dining area, has actually a nice bicycle parking area, as you can see from some of the photos. And this is a when they went through, the specific plan requires you to go through a design review and a project permit process. And when they did that at that time, there was a plan for there to be sort of a dining district along these few paths of restaurant dining areas. This particular restaurant shares the tenant space with a Sprint, but it is still quite a substantial, it's 2,200 square feet. It's only 88 seats. We're not talking about a, over 200 seat restaurant. For that reason, it's categorically exempt. It doesn't have an environmental review. And in terms of, and there is one other use, I think that you had reviewed it, a sushi restaurant. That's another pad in the center that also apply for beer and wine sales. But other than that, we're the only two restaurants in this shopping center that have applied for beer and wine sales. There is the Rite Aid and there's the Sprouts Market, but there's no other on-site sale. So they've planned this community, and what the other gentleman was saying is true, that good planning policy, and I've been doing this for 20 years, is to try to plan the community accordingly. So you do try to buffer the full zoning code, and you guys know I'm on the zoning planning committee, but you're trying to buffer from potential sensitive uses by creating a shopping center, a well-planned development. And this particular pad location is near the corner, farly separated from any potential residential use. There are no sensitive uses in the area. There is, and I did pull it out, there is the Irons School of Music and Art on Zelda, and the Mathnasium of Granada Hills. So I don't know if they fall into the traditional categories of schools, but we try to be as conservative as possible. But there are no churches, there's no hospitals, and there's no parks. And then across the street, there's another shopping center with a Ralph's and Chase Bank, and I think you all are familiar with that. So what we're trying to do is really have light touch in terms of the beer and wine application. It is very important to this application. We would love to have your support. But at the same time, I think it's an appropriate location. If you're going to have beer and wine available to a community, you want it someplace that is community oriented, that's planned to be where someone could get their shopping done and stop to have a nice meal with their family and then go home. A couple of things that came up earlier this evening, so I'll go ahead and address them in view of this application. One is we did reach out to the Devonshire Vice Police Department, Officer Lee Hart, P-H-A-R-D-T. Lovely officer. But she says that they did meet on the project, they had no issues related to it, and had prepared a letter of non-opposition for signature by the captain, and they'll submit that to the public file. But she didn't have it available by tonight. But she said that I was free to represent that to you this evening. I let her know we're coming here tonight. The other is the question of crime and concentration of public convenience or necessity finding that he was talking about with that statute. Again, he's correct that it's based on a ratio of a certain number of licenses allowed per residential uses in that census tract. And if your census tract is mostly commercially zoned, you're going to have a very few number of licenses allowed. It actually came out, do you all know this already? Because I don't want to repeat, It came out of the riots. So those of us who were doing planning during the riots, it was because people who were burning down properties and things like that there was a real sense that people were angry about the amount of concentration of liquor stores in South Central and some of these communities that they had basically been dumped on, and that there was alcohol everywhere. And so the state assembly, in a way to try to say, okay, let's trigger something, let's trigger an additional review or additional thought process with a statute called the Public Convenience or Necessity Finding. It's another finding of fact. When you do a conditional use permit, you have to make certain findings of fact. And that's added on to them. And so the only difficulty I see with the legislation is what he said, which is they triggered it by census tract, which doesn't make sense. It gives a false sense to the community, because in my mind, if you have a ton of residences in a particular census tract, you should not be allowed to have a ton of alcohol licenses in that census tract. That's a little bit backwards. I think it could have been based on something. I think it should have been on police reporting districts, because the crime statistics aren't. But I think the spirit of it is worthwhile. And in our case, we don't have to make a public convenience or necessity finding. because crime statistics are basically good, which is part of the reason the police department's okay with it. But also, because it's a restaurant for on-site sales, they do not require council action, and it's because it's beer and wine. So he doesn't have a bar, he doesn't have full liquor, and he's not trying to do off-site sales like with a gas station. So he actually does not have to do the findings of public convenience or necessity. So what they do have is the other, I think one of your other questions might have been alluding to this, which is you do have to do a sensitive uses and an alcohol uses list for the conditional use permit process for 600 feet and 1,000 feet. So that does give you an indication of how concentrated it is, and when he does submit his application, you guys will have that list. And I have the list for us, if you're curious about it. But in terms of alcohol establishments, we have the Sprouts Market, the Rite Aid, those are off-site sales. The CVS Pharmacy, again, to the south, the Ralph's to the south. So those are all of our off-site sales. The only on-site sales are ourselves and the Gotten, I hope I'm not pronouncing that right, Gotten Sushi. Okay. And then those are the only two in either of the two shopping centers. Then there's one Arigato restaurant on Zelza and Vegetable Delight, which I guess you need wine to eat your vegetables. It's probably delicious. But, so I think in this case, it's a pretty, considering the amount of commercial that we have and the caliber of the restaurant that's being presented. It is family run, but actually very experienced. They have a good track record and they have absolutely no ABC citations at any of their other stores. So I think that that's a very good track record for them in terms of their compliance. And I also think it speaks very well of them that they were willing to open and then file this application. So, yes, sir.
I just wanted to know one thing. How will the beer and wine be sold by the glass?
Yeah, right now we do bottles of beer and glasses of wine.
Okay.
We are considering draft beer.
Okay. Will you limit how much a patron can have before you say, well, you know, I don't,
Right.
because even bars have those
Absolutely.
restrictions.
And we do have those restrictions.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever bought more than 2 in any of our stores.
I'm very familiar with, I eat there all the time.
Thank you.
So,
At the other stores, we'll sell between $30 and $40 a day in beer and wine on a good day.
okay.
So it's not a moneymaker for us, but a lot of people won't get that spaghetti and meatballs unless they can have that glass of red wine.
I take mine home and have my wine at home, so yes.
So we're losing out on the spaghetti sales, not the wine sales.
Dave?
Yeah, the only comment I have is I make a distinction between on-site sales, such as this, for consumption on-site
I do
and
too.
sales to the general public.
Yeah.
This particular establishment, I think as presented, we don't have that many on-site restaurants where we have beer and wine sold. I've eaten both in and taken out from this establishment. It appears to be a very well-run business. It's an established chain, and it's not an overly large restaurant. It's a very moderately sized restaurant. All of those factors would lead me to think that this is actually the kind of establishment that we would want to say we don't have any problem with this particular beer and wine sale. So I'm simply going to make a motion at this time, and we can continue talking about it after motions are made, that we have no opposition to beer and wine sales at this establishment. I will say, you need to firm up the lasagna just a little bit.
Is that a condition?
No,
Neither one of us is that.
I second.
I think Dr. Bob beat you to that.
You got it.
Because I heard the call come from us. That's a motion by Dave, second by Dr. Bob. No opposition to beer and wine.
The application for Bill.
No opposition to the application.
Excuse me, your first name?
Margaret.
Margaret, thank you. Thank you for coming again. Same as I said to the other fellow, it's so nice, to get the heads up and to know what's coming, so that we can feel that we were part of it. Appreciate your guys' outreach. And I think it's a wonderful addition. I think it's a wonderful addition that you guys are there. We've been looking for a long time to have some restaurants here. Nice that we have outdoor seating, and it really is nice to have you guys here.
Thank you.
Well, I'd sort of like to take Dr. Bob's position on this. You know, the comment that was just made before was from a fair trade or equal competition. And that was, gee, if we have one, then we should allow the others. So if we're really going to be consistent with that argument, then what about the pizzeria? What about the other establishments who are there? You know, is that the precedence that you want to set? And under that sort of an argument that you brought up, you know, I have a problem with that. And the reason is that there isn't, from what they've said, within the two major shopping centers, nobody else, except for maybe the sushi one, which I'm not aware of, but nobody else is serving. So you're sort of setting a precedence here going down this path, which isn't consistent with how business is being operated currently. So therefore, I would see opposition to this.
I think we would evaluate each application on its own merits. And one of those would be the concentration. You know, the tolerance level may decrease as the number of establishments in a given area increase.
So now you're back to his argument that the first ones in are the ones that benefit and the others that don't apply don't. And that's what you were opposed against. So, you know, you're arguing both sides of the argument, which I would probably...
Let me let Dr. Bob respond to that.
I would argue that when the next restaurant comes in and opens up, and I have the choice between Presto Pasta and another
You won't have a
fine.
choice. You've already made a decision, so there is no choice on that.
Well, wait, okay,
You
so
always have a choice.
But John, I would, like when I go to State Street in Santa Barbara, I enjoy the fact that I can walk down that street with my lovely wife, have a nice day, stop in at I'm gonna say 30, there gotta be 30 restaurants in walking distance that I can just walk to, and all of those folks can serve me a glass of wine or beer if I wanted it. My point would be that I would think it would be, and I think I am consistent, and I would be consistent with the next guys, John, that came, if they had a good restaurant, a good record, and they were gonna manage it, I wouldn't have a problem with the next restaurant having a liquor license also.
Or with all of them, if they were all good restaurants.
But, yeah, John, I will agree with you on that. I don't understand why there would be a problem with concentration. If you have, like State Street, 20 restaurants there, how could you ask one restaurant to compete with the others and open and stay open if they couldn't serve alcohol?
Concentration is a problem.
But concentration in that commercial area, not putting it in your backyard or mine, in a residential area. So I think, I would say that I'm very consistent on it. I would let all legitimate businesses that are gonna be upright and honest on this stuff and follow the rules, I would let them compete on a level playing field.
Eric?
Like to call a question?
Okay, well, Dave had his hand up.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. So the question's been, first let me ask this, is there any other comment?
I call a question.
If there is no comment, then I can go directly to a
After you
vote.
call the question, there's no more comments.
That's it,
Well,
that's what I said.
What I'm
Okay.
trying to say is, do we need to process the question call with a 2/3 vote, or if there's no more comment,
No,
we can just
you call the question, we
You're
vote.
done.
You're done.
You're done.
I will make one point of order. We haven't had any public comment.
No public comment,
on this
Jerry.
item. Okay, so if there are no further comments and no objection, I'll call a vote.
Please.
Okay. All right, so the motion is no opposition to the application for beer and wine sales. All in favor?
Point of order, first you have to vote on the question.
Well, I
itself.
believe Eric withdrew it. He didn't object to us.
Oh, all right, I'm sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
Okay. All those in favor? I have 3 in favor, 4 in favor, all opposed? One chair is not voting, so that is 3, 1, 0.
Motion
Wait,
passed.
4, I'm sorry. All in favor,
4,
one more
1.
time.
4 and
Oh,
1.
you're not voting, Dave?
4 and 1.
I am voting.
Okay, 4, 1, 0, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Motion passed.
That motion carries. So this will proceed to the board of the neighborhood council, which meets on Thursday next week. I think I was getting Tuesday, Thursday confused, so it's Thursday next week. Margaret, are you going to be available?
No, I'll be out of town. I did, and I was remiss to introduce so they properly,
Okay.
the owner of the restaurant, but, you have a very enthusiastic participant in the community here. And we talked about it, and as you said, you're comfortable with having it brought to the full board if there is serious discussion, if you could please continue it, and so that I can represent you.
Well, we have to.
Okay, well,
We don't have a choice.
we've got the ability to bring this to the board at the next meeting and move it forward. If Jeff can be there, but Margaret's not available, or we could put this on the agenda for the next one
If
after
you
November.
prefer,
I'd prefer to go next week, if that's okay.
that's fine.
That's
Okay,
fine.
that's good,
And just so
Dave.
you know, there's no hearing date yet, so.
Yeah,
No.
okay,
And by the way, we
very good.
meet right across the way.
Right across the way.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right,
Yeah, it's right,
just straight, almost directly straight across.
Next Thursday.
Yeah.
October 5th,
Yes,
Four.
The
Or-
third.
3rd, October 3rd.
Yes, it's a Thursday, that's right.
Thank you.
Okay,
all very
great,
much.
thank you very much. And Margaret, thank you for making the trip out here. I know
Absolutely.
you got to make a trip over the hill, it's a very pleasant drive at rush hour.
I'll make friends.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure. And I'll work on that lasagna.
Thank you.
All right, so next item is the mural ordinance. Maria, I believe you had some.
Okay, yeah, I
new
actually,
data?
I do. I have a couple of comments or proposed amendments that maybe our committee could look at, because the mural ordinance has actually gone back to a joint committee, and they are supposed to rework some of these amendments, so it's our opportunity, to come up with something, because, we thought it was gonna be the final vote, but, there's really some concerns across the city. So, right now, as it stands, there's prohibitions on murals on residential homes, but not apartment buildings, not duplexes, not anything but single-family homes. So did you all get my email?
Yes.
Okay, did you get the email? Okay.
I got it.
So, I'd like to have something put out by our committee that wholeheartedly supports version B, that prohibition. But taking it one step, prohibition on single-family homes.
I thought that that's what we had done last time at the meeting, that we had basically said we want that version without residential, and then that the city council had passed, I believe it passed through committee, a version where they had just taken that entire thing out, so it was an equivalent of the version B. And it was
Yes.
going back, that piece was going back to committee for further consideration.
Version B is actually going back for an opt-in process. That's what the committee's gonna be
Okay.
hashing out. Oh, there's a whole bunch of things that, there's a lot of amendments they're gonna be hashing out. And basically what I did is I looked at O'Farrell's amendments, I looked at Weezar's amendments and all of their amendments, and took some cues and kind of put something together based on some of the amendments the other city councils proposed, and came up with something that we could do. We basically supported Pacific Palisades is what we did. Yeah, their version, and that was back then. But now, opt-in process is on the table for the committees. Do you all understand that? The opt-in process, meaning we got the city council needs to, or the committee needs to figure out a smooth process for those communities or homes that would like to have a mural ordinance that are otherwise prohibited. Everybody following me?
Mm.
You're all looking like, okay. So, we support the version B, correct? We supported that.
That was, yeah.
That was, okay, so version B is prohibition on single-family homes. So I would like to put out several amendments that we could come up with. Another one would be prohibition on multifamily residentials.
Yeah, most definitely, because our communities are loaded with, I've got a duplex right next to my house.
We have a lot of duplexes.
Yeah.
Okay, should we take one by one and vote on them, or should we just take, how should we do this?
If you wanna lump it all together,
Yeah, let's
however the
lump it
motion
together.
is formed.
Okay, the next one would be the opt-in process. Since properties would like to opt in, let's say it's prohibition and a certain property would like to have a mural, a suggestion would be, because I'm taking cues from some of the other council members, 3/4 of residents within 1,000 radius approval and a planning hearing that needs to be noticed to 1,000-foot properties adjacent to that property and given a 45 to 90-day hearing notice.
Is that actually an opt-in, or is that a conditional use permit process?
That would be an opt-in process that would have to take into consideration that 75% of residents within 1,000 square foot radius would approve, and also that the hearing officer would also take into consideration neighborhood councils and neighborhood organizations, because right now, there is no input. Basically, what is happening, the cultural affairs department just makes a recommendation for, let's say, apartment buildings and that kind of a thing, and there's no input from neighborhood councils, neighborhood organizations,
Aren't you
nothing.
mixing apples and oranges here?
How?
Well, you're talking about 1,000
Mm-hmm,
square foot radius around a proposed mural, right?
mm-hmm, a property.
That's not an opt-in process as I understand it. An opt-in process would be a geographic area, whether that be a council district area,
Mhm.
a neighborhood council area, a geographic area within a neighborhood council, or even overlapping. For instance, if it was a homeowner's area covered by Sherman Oaks, perhaps that overlaps.
Right.
My understanding is the opt-in process needs to be defined by boundaries.
You know what,
Okay.
actually, Mitch was discussing, Englander was discussing this, and what came up is that if you try to take a complete community to opt in, what are the boundaries? Do you do this by specific plan? Do you do this by community plan, and it becomes very onerous?
I disagree with that completely. You have boundaries, you have 95 neighborhood councils that all have defined boundaries. My feeling is if you're going to have an opt-in process, it should be by neighborhood council. And the neighborhood council should vet this and invite public debate, and then take a vote on it.
So you would have a whole entire community that could opt in?
Yeah. No, you would have a whole neighborhood council.
Well, that's what I mean, a whole entire
Well, that might or
community.
may not, I mean,
Uh-huh.
Granada Hills is a community, all right, we have 2 neighborhood councils. Northridge is a community, has 3 neighborhood
Okay.
councils.
Yeah, I was toying
But-
with both of them, because, it was just, I took it from a cue, some of the amendments that some of the other council members came up with, and actually, I was thinking about an opt-in process
Well,
from a
but-
community standpoint,
But
yeah.
you see when you're saying,
Yeah.
well, if there's a mural proposed, then you have to have, that's for an individual process. That's for an individual project that I would not oppose, by the way, within, a community that opts in.
Uh-huh,
But I think you have to have an opt-in process that's defined by boundaries within the city. And then if you want to recommend further restrictions on the community involvement part of that. In other words, if you're gonna have a meeting noticed, what are the restrictions, I would be fine with that, but I think it's 2 separate processes.
yeah, there are, and I did consider it, and I thought to myself, what would be easier, what would be less onerous, what would be simpler, because they're looking at an expedited process. So in order to take a whole community, I thought, what they were trying to do, is trying to find something a little more smooth, because if you take an entire community, that becomes a little rougher, but I'd go for that. I mean, actually, that is probably a better way to go. Is just look at the whole
Well,
community.
that way, at least it puts the responsibility as well as the authority within the neighborhood council to say yea or nay on an opt-in process.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm confused, because Tanya, she came to the last meeting, and when she was addressing us, I thought it was by neighborhood council
Absolutely.
district. Because
Yeah.
why then would she bring it before us to get our opinion and make a vote on something that would not include the neighborhood council? I don't vote on things that don't include the neighborhood council, because if we're not gonna have a say, why would we be voting anyway?
Okay, there's 2 different ways of doing this, house by house or neighborhood by neighborhood.
But as you said, originally, it came out that the neighborhood councils would not have a say, then
At
they
all.
came into us and asked, Mr. England's always asked us, were we opting in, and we voted on it. And we said that we were opting
No,
in.
it was the
No.
recommendation of the
Recommendation
council
from
that there be an
council
opt-in process.
to be an opt-in process.
And
Right.
what is that opt-in process gonna be? Case by case, house by house, or community by community? I just found it interesting.
Well,
that
don't
some of
say
the-
community, because
It's
as he
neighborhood
said,
Well, I
community
mean-
could be
mean-
all of Granada Hills. Whereas Granada, as you said, Northridge has 3, Granada Hills has 2. we gotta,
Okay.
I gotta find out what the meaning is
So
of this
Dr.
opt-in.
Bob had a
Yeah,
comment.
well, guys, we haven't seen any, we haven't actually, we've had people talk to us, and they certainly implied to us, Dave, that it was a neighborhood council by neighborhood council. That's why they were speaking to the council, that we could recommend that we wanted Plan B. And that was what I
That's
thought, that's what I
that's-
thought we did.
That's
So
what I
now,
thought
so
too.
now if in the legislative language, when they actually get down to the details and they write it up, they write down something different than what they implied to us, that it isn't neighborhood council, and that it turns out that, no, we're doing it on a case-by-case basis, then they misrepresented it to us.
No,
Well,
no.
I think you misunderstand. The whole issue with this opt-in or opt-out process, to begin with, we did not, there are a lot of people that had problems with an opt-out, because basically, it would mean anything goes
Right.
unless your community opts out, except it didn't define community.
Okay?
Okay, so what's the
We
community?
still didn't know.
Is that Granada Hills? And if so, how does the community have a mechanism? to
So we
opt
went
out?
with Plan B, which
So
was.
Plan B said opt-in, same problem really, okay? You have to define boundaries as to what that would be. And so, I mean, that can be by community as defined by the city, but we already have, an established boundary structure within the city now. Virtually every portion of the city is covered by a neighborhood council. So it only makes sense that the opt-in process would be by neighborhood council, because it's already got a mechanism for people to have a voice, come to a council and say, I'm in favor of this, I'm against this, okay? Have it publicly noticed and have a public available for comment, and then have representatives that have been elected by the public for that boundary area to actually vote on it. So that's what I'm saying, is that to me, it's the first real example, and I've been active in the neighborhood council process since the beginning. This is the first real example, other than planning and land use issues, where neighborhood councils would really have an opportunity to have a real say in what's going to go on in their community.
Which they did before.
Yeah.
But right now, as the ordinance stands, meaning that only residential areas are zones, which are single-family homes, will be prohibited. So if the community wants to opt in, that means that whole community would then, meaning be allowed to have murals on all their homes.
Okay, I don't see that.
Excuse me,
What you guys are saying.
I want a point of clarification. We're assuming, even Dave here doesn't know for sure because he can't speak for Mitch Englander.
No, of course not. All we can
who is
do is
on the
weigh in.
all I'm saying is, we need clarification as what they consider a community. Do they mean the whole community of Granada Hills, or do they mean each council district? And we're assuming.
No,
I don't want to assume anything. I just want to know for sure what it is I'm
All
voting
we're
on.
doing at this point is giving our input.
Recommendation.
And our
Nobody's
recommendation
telling, yeah.
is that if you're gonna have an opt-in process, it should be by neighborhood council district.
Not by
Good.
case
Then-
by
Then
case.
if
That's
that's
our
what we're gonna
recommendation, that's all.
recommend,
Yeah.
great,
So
then
that's
I
our
make sure that is the way it should be written up.
That's the amendment.
So
That'd
we
be fine.
know what we're voting for and how we feel about it, because if it's community and somebody comes back and says, oh, well, we mean all of Granada Hills, well, now I'm going, well, wait a minute now, you overlooked the council again.
So the boundary needs to be defined as
Yeah.
along neighborhood council lines or along council districts.
Yeah, okay, that's what I
Do you
need.
have
So which
more-
one is it?
Do you have more, well, let's form this.
Okay,
into a
just
motion.
just
Yeah,
two
yeah,
more,
right.
just two more, okay, and,
Did we finish that one? So we get
Well,
down.
we were just gonna take it all as one.
All this one.
well, I don't think
I don't-
Dr. Bob is clear.
But what do we have for that
She-
second one? What are you writing
I'm
down?
gonna ask her to restate it.
Okay.
Once we're
Okay.
through.
And then to have an anti-graffiti coating on the murals, even in commercial areas, because that condition is not there. And there's a whole list of enforcement in the code, in the administrative code, in the LAMC. There's a lot of enforcement. I think some of the other neighboring councils were concerned that there wasn't enough enhanced enforcement. But I would like to suggest, and here's the problem, we've got enforcement, but it doesn't happen. So I would like to just, for our neighborhood council, to clarify, maybe to have an enforcement body follow the guidelines, just something as stupid as that, because it's not being done. I don't know.
Are there also